There we go. We're recording. Welcome to the third installment of the US Speedskating ADM speaker series, where we're kind of taking a little bit of time to go through our new development model and the different aspects of it. So the first one we did, we had Brett Klicka from SpiderFit Kids with physical literacy. That's available on our YouTube channel. It will soon be available on our website. And last week we had myself, who went through our ADM to kind of talk about like the highlights of it and how you can start using it in your own club. That video will be available later this week on the US Speedskating website. But tonight we are being joined by Chris Snyder. He's the Director of Coaching Education for the US Olympic and Paralympic Committee. And he's also one of the kind of driving forces behind How to Coach Kids. If you guys haven't been to that website yet, howtocoachkids.org, check it out. This is seriously one of the most powerful tools that has come out for coaching in a very long time, especially if you have any interaction with kids. This is amazingly impactful. They've done an incredible job. And since I first started using it about a year and a half ago, I'm thinking, they've come out with so many more classes. You can get certifications through them. If you do get a certification through them, they're quick, which I'm sure Chris will talk about. Send it to myself or to Marion, and we'll give you continuing education credits for your coaching education as well. So with that, we're gonna have Chris talk for about 45 minutes, and then we'll open it up to questions. Couple notes, please keep your microphone muted. If you have questions, throw them in the chat. I'll monitor the chat, and then we can kick them to Chris after. If the group stays relatively small, like we're at right now, we can just open up the forum and have a discussion at the end. So with that, Chris Snyder, take it away, man.
Hey, everybody. Hopefully you're having a wonderful Wednesday after work. So it's great to be with you all. As the other Chris said, I'm Chris Snyder, the Director of Coaching Education for the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. I've been in that role for 8 years. Before that, I worked for US Lacrosse, the governing body of lacrosse in Baltimore, Maryland, where I ran their coaching development programming. I've been a lifelong coach since I graduated school. So coaching, coming up on my 19th year of coaching lacrosse in some capacity. Spent quite a few years at college and then found my rhythm at high school. And I love the developmental stage of high school when you come in as a young 9th grader and think you know everything. And then hopefully we train and develop you so that you do know everything when you go and leave us on that side of things. I originally started my career in the suit and tie business, where you go in for a bunch of consultants, they tell people who to hire and fire, and then they sell your company on how to train new people. And they have schlubs like me come in with a bunch of documentation software and the ability to write a bunch of things and try to tell you how to do your job. That was not very fun at all. I really enjoyed coaching, much better than that. But it did give me a real good basis of how to train adults. And then when I started coaching and loving that, I had to figure out really how do you connect with kids? And they are two different things. What's ironic is in the, not just the coaching world, but the education world, you find a lot of teachers or coaches confuse the two. We treat kids like adults in situations if we're really technically, tactically advanced and been further in our careers. We forget to develop them and meet them at their level, or we'll treat adults like kids and almost hold them back in their development because everybody develops at a different rate and everybody's got a different story how they got to where they're at. What I've figured out is great coaching is meeting people where they're at and making sure as a teacher or a coach that you have the tools or get the tools to put them in a position to be successful. My first 3 years of coaching was at the college level. And I thought I knew absolutely everything in the world about my sport and about how to coach. I was dreadfully wrong. I was horrible. The program that I started with lost every single game. My daughter, who's chiming in right now, will hear this story the rest of her life about how bad we were. I'll be right back. I have to do some work. Okay, so what's really interesting when you figure out you're not a good coach, you need to figure out how to become a good one. And that's what kind of, I think, finding people who have resources and having resources will do for you is you're able to tap into others, pull it in, and then get that to your athlete. And that's what great coaching is. How to coach kids has been a combination of things that we were seeing at the Olympic level, we were seeing at the developmental level. Our partners at Nike were seeing this in a lot of different places, that there weren't a lot of resources out there of how to really get yourself onto the level of the children you're developing, but also in teaching old dogs new trick. I'm technically now an old dog. I turned 40 on Sunday, and I need to be taught new tricks as my daughter Penelope is running around. I'm going to coach her youth soccer program. I know nothing about soccer, and I haven't had to coach 4.5-year-olds ever. So I'm a product of, I need to find resources. Putting them all in one place was the idea of how to coach kids. It's also something that's not done in a manner where I can consume it quickly and I can get to the point. In reality, every single one of us has a full-time job in some part of life, whether taking care of kids, whether it is coaching speed skating, whether it's other things. So we don't have a lot of time to waste finding resources. Our best idea, there she goes. The best idea is to have one place where you can go to find those resources. So let me tell you more about this and how it came to be. The reality of things is that inactivity in America in youth sports was shocking to us at the Olympic Committee. And in about 2014, we started to see so many kids dropping out of sports. And one of the things that was startling, and the statistics I have up here at the bottom, 26% of athletes were quitting sports at younger ages because of poor coaching. That was something that we did like most other major national organizing groups. We denied it, said that can't be true, and then we looked into the research. And we found the researchers that did that work. We found the researchers that were looking at the dropout rates, and numbers were higher than the percentages that this report showed us. And what they meant by this was, with kids quitting sports because of poor coaching, it was flat out at the youth levels, that kids were not coming back the following year because the coach didn't know enough about the sport. The coach couldn't connect with them as an athlete or just as a child, or last, people were just lazy and weren't trying to offer a better product throughout the year. So parents allowed their kids to make other decisions with their time. You would lose kids dropping out because, like going to play instruments, picking up, acting classes, or literally, the vicious idea of playing video games instead. It was because, as adults, we were ruining the opportunity for kids. So we said, let's look at more of the research and figure out what to do. Well, again, the statistics I mentioned a minute ago, they were pretty staggering when you looked at different sports were having huge dropout rates between 2008 and 2013. Many of these have stabilized now in 2020, but they haven't gone back up. We're not getting more kids playing, we're just losing less kids. So that's really tough if you're in the business of sport. And even when we think about speed skating, we get a lot of athletes transferring in from motorsports. We get a lot of athletes from ice hockey and other sports. If they don't keep playing sports and being active, it's hard to transfer them in to other sports. So we need America to be healthy to attract children to play our sports. So this is when we said we needed to do something. The thing that we did is, as Chris has been educating you on the American development model for speed skating, we started the original ADM with an idea of saying, how do we get kids active? How do we do this from a coach-centric point of view? How do we go after all of us as coaches to offer a better opportunity so kids stay in the game and not quit? Retention was the goal of putting out a 5-stage model that said, hey, coaches and administrators, meet the kids where they're at. Under the age of 12, just let them discover, learn, and play. Let them be a part of the sport and have fun. Then when it's more appropriate for your sport, it could start earlier than 12. It could start at 8, it could start at 10. It doesn't matter. Move them to another stage, teach them how to develop, and then challenge them so they stay in it. Eventually, you'll need to teach them to train and how to compete, because somewhere they're going to have to want to go to competitions, and you're going to have to prepare them for that, or else it'll be a horrible experience. And then you get to stage 4 where you're either going to dedicate yourself to want to do this as a profession or keep participating as long as you possibly can at an elite level, or use it as recreation. Some of those kids might be in your varsity sports. They're going to participate and succeed, but they have no intentions of going to college to play this game, and that's fine. They'll be at one of these two sides of the game at stage 4, and then our last stage was we'd like them to thrive and mentor others. Come back and coach, come back and officiate, be a judge in some capacity. I mean, find a way to stay active as an administrator. We founded this model to start the conversation across all 50 of the Olympic sports and the 20 high-performance organizations that run Paralympics. And now we've been pushing, and over half of the national governing bodies have an ADM program. What's interesting is when you look at the first stage and the second stage of discover, learn, and play, and develop and challenge, just what those words mean. We added in there years of experience. These are when kids first come into play. So if they are 15 years old, decide to try speed skating, you should think of them as starting at that first stage, discover, learn, and play. Now, it won't take them the entire year to discover, learn, and play. They'll be ready probably, if they're 15, they start to learn, that's maybe their first month, maybe month and a half, and then they're ready to challenge them and develop them. And they might get real quickly, within a year, up to stage 3, where you're teaching them how to train for speed skating and how to compete. I mean, that's why we put the year's experience in there, just to let you know, as an overall athlete, you know, somebody could quickly move up to stage 3, stage 4, and so forth. The real theme I'm trying to say here with these younger stages is we realized there was no resources out there to get coaches that have experience back down to that level to think and understand how those kids think. So when you have to develop them and retain them, you're armed with good material. On the other side, somewhere around 5 million volunteer coaches are in the US that are not members of national governing bodies. So volunteer moms and dads that coach most of our young athletes when they first start sports, they don't have a member of the national governing body. They don't go get training. They don't know where to look to find information on how to not screw it up. And majority of them probably played sports in some capacity. So by saying I played sports, I can figure out how to coach you soccer. I can sit there and think I'm going to be good at what I do. In reality, I'm going to suck at you soccer coaching of that little one who was in here a minute ago if I don't get some help and learn how to think at her level to make it fun for her. So that's where this whole how to coach kids journey started, saying we need to do something to impact those first couple stages of our ADM, give people resources. And we partnered with Nike, their Made to Play department, and the Aspen Institute, which is an organization that runs Project Play. So those were the players, the Olympic Committee and those two that said, let's build a platform so parents could come here, get information, and the biggest thing, can you get some type of quick training that hits the highlights? Can it not take an hour and a half? Because most of us don't have that amount of time to plan. And if I'm an existing coach with experience, how do I get you in? How do I tell you exactly what you need so you can get out quickly? And then if I need to come back and find more materials, I need to be able to get there quickly and find materials. So that's what we decided to do. We built an online training course called How to Coach Kids. If you go to howtocoachkids.org, you can quickly click the button. You can also download it in the App Store. It works on all mobile devices, and you can take the courses right in the app. They're free. Everything is free. The How to Coach Kids main course takes 20 minutes. No more than 20 minutes, and at the end, there's a certificate. The topics you'll see generally about coaching kids, practice planning, keeping them safe, making it fun, how to teach kids, and some highlights on when do you use the IDEA method, which is introduce, demonstrate, explain, attend. When should you use whole part, whole concepts as a coach? Big picture, break it into parts, big picture. And then we talk more about games-based methodology. How do I teach you by getting you to do activities and games, having fun, while I'm yelling instruction to get you to do the technical, tactical things we're going to go ahead and do when we start to compete later in practice or prepare you for other things. So we push on things that matter as coaches. We left out a lot of the fluff and got to the points. Engaging with parents is a big thing, because if you don't engage with parents at the young levels, you are not going to be able to engage with their kids. And we mentioned that in a lot of the research that we have that's inside the materials. that, especially for kids ages 2 to 6, when you first start them in sports, it's better to involve mom and dad. Find ways to make references or get them, if they're watching, get them to come out and help, because the kids are constantly staring at the parents to make sure this is okay to do and safe, and they want their attention. Be smart. You have to engage with parents in order to be successful. So the research shows it. I hate engaging with parents at the high school and the college level. They're always trying to get me to give their kid more playing time. I have to quickly learn when I go to coach a 5-year-old that I need to flip my mentality. That's a good thing. So that's why it's in there. And then last is just how to get the most out of the game and the experience. So those are some topic areas. We make it pretty interactive. We make your 20 minutes worth your time. So again, the bullet points are in there. They definitely get to the point quickly and help you as a coach just stay engaged and knock out the course, but leave with some resources that are helpful. Then you can go to the website, and on the website, you can quickly click on a bunch of areas to get sports-specific resources, as you see on the right-hand side. Audience-specific resources are in there, so you could say, hey, I coach this age group, give me some stuff for them. Or I have an athlete with ADHD. Where do I go to get some more info on how to deal with them? And you can click there, search it by topic, or we even have a special section we just built called Coaching Girls. We've identified that youth females actually get put in a bad spotlight by a lot of their coaches because, I'll be honest, most men are still coaching majority of sports, even female sports. My sport, lacrosse, more men coach women's lacrosse than women coach that sport. It's a big thing that all of our sports would love to change and would love to increase the number of females that are coaching, role models, and leading our female sports. But the reality is, with having a lot of men coaching females, guys, I did it. I coached college women's lacrosse for 2 years. My mentor, who was the women's head coach, she taught me, Chris, there's stuff that you are assuming our athletes cannot do. You don't know it, but you really are by how you're designing practice planning. Like, you need to understand a little bit more about their capabilities and, open your eyes to things. She was absolutely right. It definitely was not an equality conversation. It was, you need to understand the research about female athletes. She was dead right. The biases that follow that are inside this programming to help us, not only as men, but even as females. My wife is a coach. She coaches field hockey, has coached at the college levels and the high school levels. And she says at times she catches herself not understanding the full capacity of what our athletes could do at certain age groups. So that was important to put resources to. So the website, howtocoachkids.org, has lots of great stuff. Trainings in age groups that are 7 to 8 minutes long. How to coach 2 to 6, 7 to 11, and 12 to 14. And then how to coach females is a course we've added. Those go along with the main course that's 20 minutes. In the future, we're going to add a course that's probably about 15 to 20 minutes on coaching athletes with disabilities or abilities. And then also trauma, how to coach athletes that have been through a traumatic experience. Believe it or not, the research shows if you do a couple things and you're aware to how to adjust situations that they may be uncomfortable with, you can be a role model, a transformational leader for them, and get them in the game and be, we'll say, conscious to what they're going through so they can relate with you and you can adjust practice. All those things in a short amount of time. And let me be honest, it's not going to make you an expert. We know if you really want to educate yourself and move to being an application expert, that's really on you. What we tried to do was get the stuff that is fluff out of there, get what matters in there, and pointedly give you the resources that you could arm yourself to go to bat with so you could make tomorrow's practice successful. If you want to go ahead and be an expert in the space, well, that's what most of us are doing just by logging in and watching this evening or watching it later when it's recorded. You're the people that are investing in yourselves and are going to make your athletes better because of that. So a little bit about the site. As I mentioned, it's also on the web, on your phones and your mobile devices. So you can get everything right there at your fingertips. When you're out at the oval, you're on ice, you could pull up resources and email them to the athlete or even their parents. So the system's pretty good, but I don't want to spend all my time giving you a sales pitch on it. I want to talk about what's inside of it that matters and maybe give you my perspective. I spent the last 8 years where we developed the high performance coaching development for national team program coaches. So my department will put out, a 2-year program where national team coaches from speed skating, ski and snowboard, track and field, swimming, diving might all be in a group of 12 to 15. And for 2 years, they go through top level education. We have programming where we'll select 30 coaches across different sports that used to fly into Colorado Springs and get a 3-day drink from a fire hose education on modern day coaching. Our department does high performance coach development. Then we also help pipeline programming that governing bodies are running, much like US Speedskating, and give them advice on where they could go. And then we also run the ADM programming, because that pipeline we feel needs to be athlete centric and coach driven. So it comes out of the coaching department. So let me tell you some things that I've learned over working with the best coaches at all levels over the past 8 years. And it's inside this training. And the big topics that we focused on and how to coach kids that any coach can grow with is, if you're coaching kids, especially, that are 14 and below, look, the first thing we harp on is kids love to play. The problem with being an adult is we talk too much, and we keep them from playing, and we keep them from doing, thinking that we are teaching. You haven't taught until they've learned. They will learn by getting out there and doing that. And those words were from John Wooden, legendary coach at UCLA basketball. So you haven't taught till they've learned. You've got to get them out playing and doing. So that was the first thing we harp on, is let them play, let them do, talk less. Planning is key. If you have a solid plan and you understand what you need to teach them, as well as how to communicate with them, you'll be more successful. So plan it out to equal success with young kids. Safety is the number one thing to mom and dad, and kids are being held back cautiously because of their parents. If you make safety a priority and can communicate that to mom and dad as well as the athlete, they'll go, no problem. They'll do whatever you say if you make it safe and you make sure that you've set up those parameters. Fun teaching, that's the next thing, okay? You need to make sure that fun's a priority at all age levels. And this goes all the way up to if you're coaching master's level and you've got a 50-year-old male, a 40-year-old female learning to speed skate. They want to have fun. Getting yelled at is not fun. Even our Olympic athletes will tell you, like, the authoritative style of coaching, of yelling at me, doesn't go really well with a lot of our modern day athletes. Fun, though, for them is having a training plan, making sure we have goals set for every practice, making sure I have the whole athlete development wrapped around me, mental, physical, emotional, as well as technical, tactical. So delivering a good plan is fun for them, but you got to have good teachers. At the end of the day, the coach is a teacher, is there to lead. It's not a yeller, as well as it's not a travel agent. So your job is to teach them and find ways to advance them. And we forget that at times. And the last thing, specifically to coaching kids, your role is to be an edutainer. If you're not fun to be around and you're not entertaining them while teaching them, they're probably not going to come back. They'll find a different coach or a different sport to play. That's tough for a lot of us. That I got started in the sport of lacrosse in coaching because I loved the game. And I was like, I want to teach lacrosse to the next generation. What I had to figure out in order to stay in and be a coach as long as I have, it's not about the game. I love teaching young athletes and helping them develop. The game doesn't matter to me anymore. That's how I've switched my mentality. That's how I've stayed in the game. I'm an edutainer. I'm here to make loving learning super fun. And no matter what I teach, if I do it, kids will come back. If you do that, the research is there. It shows kids are going to want to come back. And that's what we teach in how to coach kids. So those are some highlights from the course. Some science behind it is a lot of this stuff that we're really trying to push on you in the trainings comes from both ADM concepts, general coach training, but also on the right-hand side, this is the concept of windows of trainability. So this is some science that's out there that a lot of people use in periodization that says, what should we teach athletes when? Around the physical side as well as skill development. And if you're new to seeing these graphs and the concept of windows of trainability, what it means is, well, females develop slightly faster than males. Okay, by about a year or two. Okay, general science. Here's the thing, suppleness, which is, we basically say it's agility, balance, coordination, and flexibility. So suppleness, you need to start teaching our females somewhere around 5 to 6 years old, get them thinking about agility, balance, coordination, the ABCs, right? But they go after speed pretty quickly right there. And they'll get into skill development. And look, strength is something that they definitely can focus on 12 to 14 to 15. It's not something you need to do early in life, okay? Stamina is something that kicks in for them around 10. But if you start to look down below, for boys, really stamina doesn't kick in till around 13 in those windows of opportunity for maximum training opportunity. For boys, they go suppleness to speed 1. Skills is a big thing here, and their optimal time to develop skills on the male side goes till about ages 12 and 13. For girls, that window shuts about a year or two earlier. Why we looked at this stuff is because in these courses, again, we're trying to cut out the fluff, get to what matters. We wanted to try to really tell coaches at these different age groups, you should think about focusing on a couple of these things that will actually make them better. And it's not about everybody gets a hug and a high five and an ice cream sandwich. Stage 2 in our research on ADM and long-term athlete development shows kids don't want, everybody gets a hug and a high five. They want to be challenged. They want to develop. And if you're not teaching them how to train and compete, they will leave and go find it somewhere else. So you got to match the two. It's got to be super fun, engaging, but you got to keep them developing. That's what you do as a coach / teacher. So these windows of trainability just arm you with some ideas of when we should be teaching what, and we transferred that into the themes of each of these age-specific courses I'll show you. The number one thing was, hey, you got to understand the age group. So if you're coaching 2 to 6 year olds, they think differently than 7 to 11, who think differently than 12 to 14. And yes, you will have kids who develop early and develop late. You as a coach will have to adjust to try to figure out how to work with them and, transfer information, how they learn. But at the end of the day, that's your job, is to figure out how to work with that age group, not make the age group figure out how to work with you. 2 is what matters at this stage. You have to, in each of these courses, focus on a couple of things that matter to help you when you're teaching your technical tactical, when you're pushing them and developing them the right way. So focus on what they can actually mentally handle and what's going to help their bodies develop. Give them a couple of tips and focus areas, but then last thing is we literally spelled out some ideas of how to keep it fun. And, it's not to insult anyone's intelligence, but my 5-year-old has fun different than 15-year-olds. And you need to just keep that in mind, especially when you have different age athletes coming in for training on the ice. You'll need to adjust what you're doing to meet them at their middle ground. So those windows of trainability helped us do this. And I summarized kind of the themes that you'd find in each of these age modules. And again, the modules take 7 minutes each. So the course we have for 2 to 6 year old, we push you to understand them. Then we talk a lot about movement and preparation of skills, how to stay focused on getting them the movement skills they need, get ready. We give you a couple of tips and tricks on movement and being organized at this level. And then we describe, this is what 2 to 6 year olds really find fun based off of child development research and surveys. Then we go to ages 7, 11. And again, we'd say, understand that age grouping. Here is where development is super important, especially getting focused on skill development, because here's where you really need to tap into agility, balance, coordination, and other physical skills. But also, this is where a lot of their technical, tactical skills can be learned faster. Ice hockey got super into this research, and they started eliminating contact, like physical contact in the game under the age of 14, and even pushing it down to saying you shouldn't have major contact under 12, because the windows where they can teach ice hockey stick handling skills are prime between the ages of 8 and 10. If you're scared of getting hit, you will not focus on stick handling. So they got rid of hitting until you get closer to 14 to allow their athletes to get better developing skills in that window of trainability. So our 7 to 11 course, we push you on thinking about skill development and focusing heavy, and then again, focusing on fun. And just a last piece of information, ice hockey has been using that for almost 10 years. They just had the most Americans ever drafted in the first round and in the overall NHL draft in last year's draft. They took their ADM program and used it to redesign how they build elite success while having kids have fun and more time on task. So, you know, paying attention to some of this research, they're showing us it can pay off if you really dedicate to it. And last, 12 to 14-year-olds, okay? Again, you got to understand them, but planning is super important, and then training. So starting to add speed, strength, and other key physical development factors here is where you're going to get your biggest bang for the buck. So we remind you, look, you need to add these things in and start to be super serious about it, but make sure you're qualified to teach those things. Make sure that you prep them, that they can handle that kind of a load. And here's where you start to take that training a little more serious. And again, fun, we don't tell you what fun is for 12 to 14-year-olds. This is where we start to remind you that they need to have fun, because it's so easy to treat athletes at this age level like adults. So we give you a little bit of that. So inside those courses, that's where we try to match this information with the windows of trainability and that information. And I'll be honest with you, we don't talk about the windows of trainability in the courses. Why? A volunteer mom and dad are going to go gray in the face and blank out when the moment I say windows of trainability. I tried this with my sister, who has a PhD in child development. I tried to explain it. She's like, Chris, I don't care. Like, I really just don't care. And it's a reality. You know, people who don't nerd out like all of us to be on a webinar on a Wednesday night, you know, aren't so interested in that information. It's our job as experts to bake it in a way they'll listen to it. So just want to let you know where a lot of this stuff comes from is very purposeful. Now, I wanted to give you the factors that I think we really mess up and that we need to focus on as coaches moving forward from all of this how to coach kids research that I've been able to see and all this ADM information. So here's my 3 things. I'll touch on them real quickly, and then we'll move on to some Q&A here at the end. But the 3 things I can tell you that I've taken away from being part of this is, 1, if I'm going to be a great coach, I need to understand the age group. And when I have a lot of different skill levels as well as age levels coming to play, I got to quickly snap back into how do I connect with that kid? So pulling this information is important. 2 is I have to really focus. If I have females, I need to focus on what matters to them and how to make a great environment. A lot of researchers that are super, high up in research about male-female differences in developmental got mad at us when we built a coaching girls course, because their point is you treat girls no different than boys. An argument was like, we agree with you. The problem is we have a lot of bias that's baked into, coaches like myself who just assumed I was great and I wasn't taking into consideration my bias that I naturally put that my female athletes can't handle the load that I put on my male athletes. Yeah, there's scientifically, yes, they may not be able to handle the strength and conditioning load that I have, but when you look at their body, anyway, you look at the science of it, they can handle the load. They can actually handle a hell of a lot more stress and pressure than men can. I've seen that, firsthand with my wife having 2 children. Like, they're superior in a lot of areas. My bias needs to be checked. That course matters and is going to help. And then the last thing is, what is fun? We forget what fun is at different age groups. And as coaches, we basically try to just assume what we're teaching and what we're letting them play is fun. Well, that assumption is going to get those kids to not come back. Purposeful practice is going to get those kids to come back. So let me share you a tiny bit with those. In these age groupings, understanding the athlete, here's some stuff just to wet the whistle. And these resources are inside the courses. But first, when you've got a young kid, 4, 5, 6 years old, it's all about them. They don't get the team concept. They need to explore it. My 4-year-old tells me, Dad, just let me do it. And I remember, oh, that's right. You need to just do it yourself. And you just want to play around with this and try to figure it out. Next is they have no concept of time at all. And they think anything they do is amazing because their grandparents, myself, my wife, we kiss their butt if they do anything good. And we're so excited that they go to bed on time. So they think they're awesome. And so don't rip them down and don't tell them other kids are better than them. Last thing is if they cannot see something, they can't do it. Remember, they're a blank slate. So I have to demonstrate or get someone to demo what's being done for them to really get it. I can't explain it. I screw that up all the time with my 4-year-old, is I try to explain it to her. If I just show her, she gets it quickly and can try it. So those are things that if I'm going to go and coach youth soccer or have a new athlete coming to learn to skate, I might want to quickly read over that. Next, if I've got kids between 7 and 11, the research shows this is when they really start to learn things in smaller groups. Don't put them in giant groups of 20. They can get them in groups of 5 to 8. They hit their prime. They can start to figure out teamwork. Cause and effect starts to make sense. So they'll get the idea that if they talk while you're talking, that's why they got benched. At 6 or even 5, they won't get the idea that you made them mad or they were doing something rude by talking over you. But at 7 to 11, you can hold them accountable. They get cause and effect. They start to understand time, and now's a good chance between 7 and 11 to start to put time pressures on them. Can you get this done in 30 seconds? Could you get 10 reps done here in this amount of time? They'll start to get that. The big thing here is they'll get concepts of how stuff works on a limited basis. They can start to see a little bit bigger picture, but they're not yet ready to be held accountable to seeing how the whole system works. We see a lot of youth tennis players that are studs, super awesome, pushed into young athlete tournaments that don't get the idea about if I get points here, it qualifies me up here. So they end up with crazy parent syndrome. Mom and dad being nuts and taking them everywhere to get these points, and the kids just burn out and die because they can't get the big concept that you're preparing me to be an elite athlete, and they eventually just get over it, right? So take it slower. Explain things to them. They'll get it on a little bit limited basis, but you need to constantly come back to the bigger picture to reinforce it to help them see it. And last is, this is where they start to figure out who's faster. And they also, their emotions, their feelings start to get hurt if they're not performing as well. This is where you need to tell them why and give them things to work on at this age level, okay? Younger, don't waste your time. It's about being an edutainer. 7 to 11, this is where you really help them develop. Then 12 to 14, understanding the kids. This is really where teamwork, they understand urgency. They're fine with being challenged to develop on their own. They'll start to get complex ideas, but I said this before, as adults, we start to treat kids that are 12 to 14 in 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. We start to treat them like an adult, like you should know better by now. They're still kids. It's our job to keep it fun and teach and train them in these concepts so they can be more successful for life. So 12 and 14 is where you need to really figure out what stage of development they're in and what load they can handle, and then start to challenge them. So that's one thing. Quick tips, how to make it good. Making it fun, okay, another thing we forget. So for the little kids, I'll just highlight 2 of these. 1, it's okay to involve mom and dad. If they're on the sidelines, talk to mom and dad, like let them skate over to their parents and see how things are going and check in. Or have mom and dad come out there and be the person that they're going to sprint to touch their hand, okay? The next thing is you got to make room for free play. If you don't have a bunch of tricks up your sleeve of games they could play, they're going to get bored quickly. And also, you might need to let them go play a game so you can work with one kid whose shoelace broke or something else. The one thing I left in here is remember, if they can't see it, they can't do it. So fun is stuff they can see and then they can do. For ages 7 to 11, this is where the thing I'll emphasize is right in the middle. No laps, no lines, no lectures. Don't punish these kids a ton. They're still learning, but also they need to move. And this is where they get super active and they need to develop those skills to help them be successful for life, physically, mentally, emotionally. So don't lecture a ton, get them doing. And the third thing that's there is you need to really celebrate what they do. They're starting to figure out who's better than who. Find ways to celebrate every kid. Remember, again, they figured out they figure out who measures up to their peers. They know who's getting better and who's not. So find ways to encourage them to stay in the game. And then the last one there of making it fun. This is where I said, let's challenge us as adults to figure out why to make it fun and figure out what'll be fun, because there's so many benefits to these kids being active and staying in sports. It's going to reduce their social inhibitions. It's going to make them more outgoing with other kids, which you need to be successful in life. So by doing sports and having fun, they're going to be able to be more comfortable. Two, it reduces stress in these kids. They're at that age where, again, we're expecting them to be adults. Dude, it's super stressful. Intrinsic motivation goes up. By them having fun and playing sports, they're going to want to be more outgoing, and they're going to motivate themselves to accomplish things. And last, like, really, sports, it teaches them, it gives them a relaxed alertness. So they're able to handle more pressure and more situations. Remember, this is when they can really start to put together complex ideas. Stresses are bigger. So keeping them involved in sports, having fun, and coming back every day is going to make them better people for life, especially at this age. So take that a little more serious. The last thing is just coaching girls. Like what opened my eyes huge was this. These are the three things, what matters to girls. They did a huge national survey at Nike. They did a lot of digging with groups like We Coach and Up to Us. And they asked a lot of female athletes under the age of 14, what matters? Well, the number one thing was, yes, making friends and being social. 2, feeling a part of a team. But 3, being active. Okay, winning and being competitive was number 8. And other things were much farther down the line. But females can be at this younger level more socially oriented. They want to feel accepted. They want to be involved, and they want to be active. Lecturing them is not going to keep them in the game. And finding coaches who make it super fun and make this a culture of they're going to retain the athletes. The things that I want you to consider that are taught in the course are: 1, what does an inclusive culture really look like? And that's very important, that it's all about the entire team. 2, team culture matters. So life lessons, remember, our females, they develop, mentally and emotionally faster than males. So they clue into being a part and accepted quicker. So team culture will matter, and you need to make that a part of it, because they tend to be creative faster. They learn a lot more. They're more advanced in a lot of different things. We need to meet them where they're at and make the team important. But the last is, I mentioned this before, you just got to check your bias at the door. Male or female coach, doesn't matter. Going in, looking at some of these things are going to help you when you have a young female athlete to make sure you're setting them up for success. So again, I hope I'm just, exciting you a little bit about, there's some good information that can make you an even better way to connect with your athletes. The last thing is, yes, in the Coaching Girls course, they do break out recommendations of girls from ages 5 to 7, 8 to 11, and 12 to 14, what to just keep in mind. The thing that's, 12 to 14-year-olds, when they hit a lot of their pubescent stage and they're starting to go through a lot of changes, and you need to be aware of that. So, if a girl has an off day or her energy levels are changing, that you're aware of that and you can support them through it, versus saying, you sucked, I'll cut you, or she's dogging it. Well, you got to understand the athlete. So coaches, this is where this Coaching Girls course actually can help a lot of people, especially, if you suggest this to other young coaches who are just starting out, and we normally put a lot of young coaches with lower age levels, this is stuff that'll help them be successful with just people and in life. So at the end of the day, some stuff that I figured out that matters, in ADM and sport as a whole, retention matters and growth matters. These dropout numbers aren't going to help anyone in sport. But again, like I said, our jobs as coaches is to be teachers and to edutain people. Something personally, and sorry to overwhelm you with Sesame Street images here. Obviously, having a young kid has challenged me to get to know them if I'm going to help coach them. So having a good coaching routine, this is what I've taken with in every single one of these suggestions. There's actually a Sesame Street YouTube song that goes with them. So this is how lame I am as a dad, that I know more about Sesame Street songs than I know about the modern top 40. But here's my good coaching kid routines for you. Okay, first thing, there's a song by One Direction called What Makes You Useful. Okay, I'm going to tell you, what makes you useful with kids when you're coaching them is the fact that you realize it's about the kids, and you need to get down to their level and understand them. If you can get down and quickly remind yourself before you get on the ice what matters to a 6-year-old, what matters to an 8-year-old, what matters to the 14-year-old that you have in a session, automatically you're going to connect with the athletes. They're going to love you more. The second tip I have for you is a goofy song by a guy named Andy Grammer. He sings about when you're going to play today, you got to plan the play and play the plan. You can't wing it with young kids if you want to be their rock star coach. Remind yourself of how to work with them, what's fun, what matters, and plan your practice. And if you plan your practice, add a game in, maybe make sure that you're adding some team culture stuff, a couple of fun, routines that you teach, whether it's a team cheer, some type of camaraderie, switching up partners so they all get to interact with one another. That matters. So you gotta plan the play and play the plan that you have to make these kids be successful. And then the last one, there's 2 songs, okay? One by Maren Morris, who's a country singer, and the other one, The Power of Yet by Janelle Monáe, okay? So Oops, Whoops, Wait, Aha, as well as Power of Yet. Both songs are all about, dude, the kids are gonna screw up. Your job is to teach them, and they haven't learned until you've taught, and you haven't taught until they've learned. So don't get upset as the kids don't get it. They either may not be there mentally yet, or they may not be there physically, but that's your job. Your job is to coach them and teach them how to get it right. And it's also to teach them that it's okay. You'll eventually have that aha moment when it clicks. Be a good edutainer, keep them in the game. They'll eventually get it. And just keep telling them, it's the power of yet. You just haven't gotten it yet. But the moment you do, you're going to be on to greatness. So if anyone wants my slides when I'm done, I've hyperlinked to every one of these goofy songs, so you could use them. Just in closing, some resources that have made me better in coaching overall. There's planning. If you want to do better planning, Dr. Wade Gilbert has a book called Coaching Better Every Season. It's a home run. Cueing, the language you use to get people to actually do things at all age levels. Nick Winkelman's new book is The Language of Coaching. It's a thick book, but it's awesome. It'll teach you how to say the right thing at the right time. There's lots of research on generations, how to coach kids or how to work with athletes at different generational ages. So there's the millennials, then there's going to be Gen Z. There's also Gen Y, it's called at times. There's now Gen Alpha. My daughter's Gen Alpha, meaning that, we worship the ground they walk on. So we're all in trouble when she hits about 9 or 10, because they're all going to think that they're God's gift. So check out some generational info. That inspired a lot of what we do with How to Coach Kids. Brett Klicka's 60 Ways to Play. I know you guys have had him on. He's a rock star. And then my last thing I'll just say is, look, if you want to be great with coaching kids, you got to build a network of people who know all about them. So get a teacher, get a child psychologist, get a good friend, get a mother, get a father of 5. They're going to give you a lot of advice as a coach that matters and will help you be successful with young kids. So those are just some resources that I think will make you an amazing coach for kids. And thanks so much for your time. So yeah, Chris, we can open it up. Thanks for letting me ramble. I apologize for my 5 or 4-year-old interrupting the first part, but it's not a talk about kids if you don't have one running through the house yelling. So
exactly, that's why we're all here. If you get upset at a child running through the background of this, you're probably on the wrong webinar. So absolutely no problem on that. I'm surprised that my children didn't do the same. So Snyder, thanks so much, man. I absolutely loved it. Kind of one question that I put up in the chat myself was, I'm interested to know how many of you have taken the course. I got a couple answers that people haven't yet, but to answer, Mikey asked the question, do you have to be a USS member to take the classes for free? Absolutely not. This is open to everyone. Like Chris said, how many coaches don't fall under an NGB umbrella?
5 million.
Yeah, this was designed for everyone, and it's an incredible tool, absolutely incredible tool. One of the things, a couple of things that I want to touch on quick is the fact that in the talk that I gave 2 weeks ago, for those of you who are on that, or those of you who are watching it now, you'll see a lot of similarities in a lot of what we talked about, and the fact that keeping it fun was mentioned so many times in my talk, and Chris mentioned it so many times in this talk. It's absolutely critical. But we're in a little bit of a different sport. We're in a tough situation. We're not a traditional Big 5 sport, or even expanding collegiate sport. We're in a sport where we don't have the luxury of just having 4 and 5-year-olds on the ice all together at once. we're coaching 7-year-olds and 70-year-olds on the same exact session. We have to be really, really versatile with how we incorporate these things. We have a lot of challenges in our sport that aren't faced by other sports. And that's one thing through all of the training and education I've done on ADM. I try to draw similarities between us and lots of sports, but we're very unique in how we operate. So I'm interested to kind of hear from you guys of how do you manage that? How do you find ways to keep it fun for the young kids, keep it serious and fun so you can get the appropriate training for your kind of developing and emerging elite athletes? And then how do you keep your masters athletes, if you have that diverse group, how do you keep everyone engaged the whole time? So I don't know if anyone's got thoughts on that. Feel free to unmute yourself. But I know that's a challenge for everyone. And like Chris said, building a network is important. So this is a good opportunity for you guys to share ideas on things like that. Anyone? All good. If you do have a thought, chime in and say something. Marion, I see you're up.
I have a question in regards to, the current situation. If kids return back to play, obviously if the smaller they are, the less they understand the concept of social distancing and not touching each other. How do you best deal with that?
Yeah, I could chime in, Marion, and throw my thoughts on that one. The biggest thing there is to engage parents, we're finding out, of letting them know, hey, here's what we're going after. We're going to do our best to do these things, but please understand that in how we're doing the sport, kids are going to get close to each other, but we're going to constantly be monitoring that. But let us know, open line of discussion. If you see something that, went on that day or we could do better, open dialogue on how we could get better. I found, and we've heard reports, sports that have opened that door to mom and dad being able to help and say, hey, I saw a couple times that this happened. Like, oh, thanks for bringing that to our attention. We'll work to make sure that we can improve next time. By making sure it's a partnership, the expectation of being perfect in a pandemic no one has ever faced before in anyone's current lifetime, becomes a partnership. So that's one way to do it. The other way I've seen successfully, just to give you a specific, is literally a lot of coaches have been taking 6-foot poles, wooden poles out with them, finding ways to cut pieces of string. So when the kids are racing or kids are doing other activities, they can each hold an end and try to keep it, as far apart as they could. Cones and having an internal, an inside one and an outside one, and kids staying in lanes have been really successful. And then the last thing that we found with things is just knowing what your state recommendation is around this stuff. Because when you go from the state of Pennsylvania to the state of Colorado, one of them is requiring masks all the time. And another one, if you look at some of their return to sports information from the state, the kids don't have to wear a mask, but the coach does. So knowing what's being recommended in your area, sharing that with parents, and then saying this is how we're going to do practice seems to be a way to, do your best in these situations. That's what we've seen.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Hey, one question that we got was, would it be appropriate for parents to take these classes as well? And I know your answer, so go ahead with it.
Yes, but yes, and why it's appropriate for parents to take these classes is because I would even say this. If you lead parents from saying, hey, parents, I'd love to see you guys take this class. We use this as research information to help us work better with your kids. But tell them, this will help you connect better with your kids when you're playing in the backyard and encouraging them to try to do our sport or develop. If you can set it up of, hey, mom, dad, you can help your kid be more successful. If you can use some of these tactics as well when you're helping them at home with their technique, when you're getting out and going for a run as they skate on rollerblades next to you, or when you guys go out to just a skating session on your own, if you could use some of these tactics, we're all on the same page. If you cue it up that way, it seems to work with a lot, especially the millennial age parents. Because and any parent, I used to be the jerk that said, I don't need kids. I have 57 on my lacrosse program. Now I have 2, and I understand why parents are crazy. Like, like they're awesome, like you love your kids. Anyone who tells me, Chris, this will make your kids successful, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm a sucker. We all are. So make them all suckers. Say, hey, parents, here's a tool that could help them develop at home and have more fun. They'll take it, and I bet you they'll learn a thing or two, as well as they'll cut you some slack, when you're out there trying to figure out how that 7 and 70-year-old go around the rink at the same time and work together. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll add this. I think parents really get a bad rap from coaches and people, administrators in sports, like, oh, dealing with the parents is the worst part of it. As a parent, and Chris, I was dying when you were talking about turning 40 and coaching, being in coaching as long as you are, and coaching your 40-year-old daughter's soccer. I just turned 40. I've been in the coaching for a long time, and I'm coaching my son's 4-year-old soccer starting next week. So, and I'm horrified of it. But I think from the parent, looking at it from myself, from the parent standpoint, like, knowledge is power. Communication is really important. To suggest that your parents take these classes would be so powerful for you. Just like Chris said, it will help you so much so they can understand the why behind what you're doing. So that's really, really critical. So yeah, I would highly encourage it, because I think through that education, you're going to start developing a group of parents that are great to work with. You understand the moves that you're making and why you're doing what you're doing. So I think it's really, really important. And Melissa, it was an awesome, awesome question. Really, really good stuff. The other thing, we got a couple of minutes that I wanted to talk about that I love that you said, Chris, is also something that parallels what we talked about 2 weeks ago, was like celebrating everyone. And we were talking about celebrating effort in our ADM, and how at the younger ages, it's really important to celebrate effort. We're in a sport where kids naturally understand who's faster than the next. This isn't a sport like soccer or hockey where they can just score a bunch of goals throughout the game. And at the end of the day, the kids really can't count all that much, and they certainly can't keep track of score over time when they're really young. And so it's just like, hey, what was the score of the game? I don't know. It must have been a tie. Like, who knows? But with us, we can't do that. We can't hide the fact that so-and-so finished in front of your, 8-year-old. But what we can do as coaches is find ways to celebrate the effort that they're putting forward, because that sets them up in the future to have that growth mindset that we want them to have, and to have that intrinsic motivation that we want them to have. So that's something that's really important. And I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah, Chris, and the one quick story I'll tell you, because I know we're about to wrap up. So we had a figure skating coach who coaches a couple of Olympians. She coaches, she'll have the 6-year-old phenom in with the 12-year-old, in with 2 16-year-old up and coming studs, right? All in the same kind of group lesson. She'll make them do races against each other on the ice. What she encourages and celebrates is your effort. And she uses the whole concept of, you just haven't caught them yet, similar to that song I showed you. And what she says is she does this throughout the entire year, constantly having the young kids race, because they're all just trying to catch that kid who's a little bit older. But what happens is the younger kids get faster because they're celebrated on effort. The older kids, when they dog it that one time and get caught by someone younger than them, now get motivated to have it never happen again. And now everybody's effort levels go up. They all get better. They all get faster. But it builds really good camaraderie. So again, if you're celebrating effort and just constantly reinforcing with, you haven't got it just yet, the younger kids get super excited. And the older kids, they start to buy in, and it becomes a fun team thing if don't get caught by the younger ones. So again, it starts to become fun because they didn't make it about who won and celebrating winning. They celebrated effort, and on occasion, a little bit of shaming of the older kids for not trying and getting caught by someone half their age. So, it'll teach humility. Awesome. Doing that in figure skating, it's going to help in speed skating. And yeah, if you keep doing that, you guys will go forth and be brilliant. So
awesome. And I love that, closing with that, the power of yet. I think that's really important for a lot of kids. It's something a lot of the coaches here can take away. So with that, we're right at the mark. So we won't take any more of your guys' time. Thank you so much. Chris's information is on here. You should all have my information and Marianne's information. If you guys have any questions, please reach out to us. I will get the slides out to you guys as well so that you can look through the slides. And this recording will be available on US Speedskating's development page probably in 2 weeks. We'll put this one up. Keep an eye out for the ones that are coming up right now. We've got the physical literacy one that's available, as he mentioned earlier, the 60 ways to play. You all have access to that for free. You can pull it down off of our website, as well as there's a video that kind of walks you through how to utilize 60 ways to play that we put together. Next thing is, the next one we're going to be doing is August 19th is the next one of these that we'll be doing. And that one we're going to be talking about utilizing the Learn to Skate USA program. And I know we've had a bit of a struggle with it. We haven't been a good fit necessarily with it, but we've come up with some pretty creative ideas, and we've had some people who have been utilizing it extremely successfully. So we're going to share that a little bit and talk about what does your Learn to Skate look like? What could it look like? Because it's really one of the main tools that we have in recruiting people to our sport. So keep an eye out for that. That should be in next week's member news. We'll have the details for that. And if you're on the coaching list, if you're one of our certified coaches, you'll get an email directly about it as well. So with that, thank you everyone so much for joining us tonight. I really, really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to go over this really, really, really powerful tool. If you haven't been to howtocoachkids.org yet, do it. It is incredible. They've done such a good job with it. And it will definitely improve your game as a coach. And I know you guys will all deliver higher quality products after looking at it. So thank you guys all so much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.